just repeat that line because we just got light.
When all desires clinging to one's heart fall away, then that mortal becomes immortal and he attains Brahman year. So we are talking about the absence of desires. When all the desires from the heart fall away, when that the you can say condition is given, when all the desires clinging to the heart fall away, at that moment, that instant in time, you transcend time. You transcend space, you transcend everything. What is that? You attain the reality, you attain Brahman year. And it's very clear. You attain Brahman here and now. From this, you can understand that there is a kind of a screen, or much better, the heart has been given to the world, and the world has been burning it. But I didn't give my heart to the world. Well, you've set your heart on many things, and we have seen we get tormented, tortured, burnt. Why? Why did we commit that mistake? See, it's not just setting your heart on something. We are in a way possessed by desires. You say we are possessed by an ideology, we are possessed by an idea, we are possessed, that thing grows inside us and possesses us. So these desires which had been clinging to one's heart, what desires? Well, these desires make that infinite disappear, as it were. And in its place comes and sits down that petty individuality of ours, which needs to be constantly satisfied with things which it keeps on eating and wanting and more and more. In the Bhagavad Gita it is said, Mahashano Mahapapma. It's a great eater and a great sinner. What's that? Desire. These desires, as the Bhagavad Gita says, Rajoguna Samudbhava. It is, you can say, born out of Rajoguna, passion, anger, hatred, jealousy, everything that impels us outwards. So we have in our heart all these, you can say, teeming desires. Desire to be recognized, desire to do something, desire to be seen, desire to be appreciated, desire for eating this and seeing that. It's only desires? Well, the desires possess us. How? Through karma. That's why in Vedanta is saying, avidya, kama and karma. Desire and karma. So these desires have been born from where? From ignorance. So when the desires drop off, ignorance drops off. When you can see the truth of your wild goose chase around the world over lifetimes and lifetimes, and suddenly you've had enough of it, and these desires drop off. And when they drop off, you realize that reality, that Brahman here and now. So it is these desires, the teeming desires that are clinging to our heart. Absence of desires is a state of Brahman. So when the commentator says, thus, a person who has realized a supreme reality, that person has kind of gradually graduated, as it were, to higher and higher and higher levels of the mind itself. The mind has various layers, from the grossest, from the subconscious levels to the unconscious levels to the preconscious and conditioned, and as through inquiry, as through spiritual practices, the person keeps on elevating gradually from the lower levels of the mind to the higher levels of the mind. And as that mind opens up, the reality is more and more revealed as the mind opens up in the higher levels of its, you can say, being. So as the mind opens up, reality external and reality internal is revealed more, manifest more. And at one point of time, all the desires of the heart drop off. The example illustration is given like a stone that rolls down the hill. That is the way all the desires fall off. There is no question of the stone rolling back up by itself. And as the stone rolls down, as the desires drop off, what we are getting is this mortal, this person who was till now mortal. Desires make us mortal. Freed from desires, we are immortal. People talk of what is reality and what is the truth, what is God, what is Brahman. Well, we can drop off these realities of your desires, that the desires that are drawing the senses out, making that mind imagine and remember hundreds and hundreds of things. Once you can drop these off. But dropping it off is not easy. I want to drop it off. But they don't drop it off. They don't drop down. It's like the story of a teacher who was sitting with his disciple on the banks of a river. And the teacher, the guru, he notices a blanket floating downstream. He tells his student, his disciple, go and get that blanket. We might need it. So the student, with all enthusiasm, plunges into the stream, swims toward the blanket and starts hauling it. But as he's hauling it, the force of the water, the stream, or the rapid is quick, and that student is being dragged along with that blanket. The guru sees that frightful scene and shouts to the disciple, let go that blanket, let go, you save yourself. The student, the disciple, yells back, well, I have given up that blanket, I have released that blanket, but that blanket isn't releasing me. Well, that blanket was actually nothing but a bear which was floating downstream. And then when it sees this young disciple coming, it grabs at him. So we want to give up the desires, yeah, but those desires have got us in its grips. So that is that quandary, that great dilemma. Well, we want to give up desires if you want to know the truth, yes, but then all those memories and those seeds which we had sown are now growing into these huge, you can say, fields of crops. And we don't know where it ends and where it starts, where it begins. So here is saying, yada, when, sarve, all, pramuchante, when you're freed, when things fall off. What fall off? Kama, desires. So, what is the practical way of giving up desires? Well, we've seen in the Mahabharata is saying, Kama janami te mulang sankalpat kila jayate. That is, O desire, I know your root. You are born in imagination. I will not imagine anymore. And I will kill you. So desires are born out of imaginations. Sankalpa. Imaginations will impel one to acquire it, attain it, pursue it, long for it, pine for it. So the first thing is drop away all imaginations. That is the way. Look at the thing as it is and see its defects. As the Bhagavad Gita also says, dukkha doshanu darshanam. See that pain associated, see those faults in those particular objects. And you will give up like a hot iron ball. You'll drop it off. What was I doing? Learn to observe things, learn to see things correctly as they are. So, learn to observe, learn to drop away all imaginations. This is the way. And you've gone a long way. Then what about all those impressions of the old desires which are there, lurking there? Well, to give an illustration, you plant a tree and you stop watering it and stop taking care of it. The moment you take away your attention of attending to that tree will slowly wither away and it will die off. Desires which have been lurking in our minds over the years, over lifetimes, yes, even lifetimes, they need to be neglected. That's the first thing. Don't pay any attention to them. The moment you pay attention to these desires, they get a kind of a new lease of life, as it were. Stop paying attention. Turn your attention towards the reality, towards the indwelling self, towards God, towards devotion, towards spiritual practices. And as those old impressions of desires which are there, and experiences also, they start withering away. They become dehydrated. And then you can easily defeat him. Yes, right now they have been dictating things. Then later, as you get a grip on them, you will start dictating things. That is mastery. And that is what you're supposed to be doing. So when you come down to this point, saying, when this person has come to that level of understanding in the higher levels of the mind, when all the desires that were clinging to the heart fall away. Now, heart, where is the heart? Is that this physical heart? No. Is it the emotional heart? Not even that. Of course, we talk about emotion, but it's the limbic system, it's here inside. Saying the heart, in the old days, the heart was called the heart, the core of your being. In Vedanta, it is the intellect. It is that intellect of yours, which is your very heart, your very soul, as it were. So what does the intellect do? It thinks in a diametrically opposite way to truth. It thinks, I am the body. As the commentator says, yes, I am the body, I am this, I am that, I am so and so. So that intellect has to be purified because it is covered by a kind of layers and layers of desires. So as you keep on polishing the intellect, it becomes free. It reflects the reality as it is. So clinging to the heart means clinging to the intellect. As we know, the inner instrument called the antakarana, inner instrument, has got 4 faculties. It is one manifesting as mind, as memory, as intelligence or intellect, and the sense of I. So it's a different modes of the same thing. So it is in that inner, you can say, instrument there deep down within you, within the subtle body there. That intelligence which flashes. And what does it flash? It flashes this world within it. It's like a mirror. It's flashing the world. And within that world is that individuality of yours. The world is bound to you. You are bound to this world. It's kind of it's synchronized, perfectly synchronized. You drop off one, the world drops off. You drop off this false identification with the body, with the mind, with the senses, and everything falls up. So here saying desires by ignorance, desire. So this mortal, till now, this person was mortal. And what made this person mortal? Desires. Desires keep on taking you from one pillar to the next post, pillar to post, pillar to post. It takes you from one experience to the other, mundane experiences. And you keep on repeating. It's a cycle that's unending. It's constantly. We don't learn from the first experience. We need another and another and another. But then we get caught up in it. So it is desires that make us mortal, ties us down to the mundane world. And here it is that the grace of the Guru, the grace of God comes in and asks you to reverse that perception of yours. Reverse it. We have something called the cognitive ease. Cognitive ease is we are comfortable with the automatic perception of things. We don't need to kind of break our heads over certain things. That's what gives us a biases. We take things as they're presented, yes. We don't inquire into it. We don't perceive things properly. We don't dissect it. So if a thing is written in large letters, if a thing is repeated over and over again, that's cognitive ease for you. We will go towards those things only. And there is an opposite, cognitive stress. What is that cognitive stress? Cognitive stress is when you cognize something, you start using your faculty of reasoning and logic and insight into dissecting a particular thing. That takes energy. cognitive ease does not take much energy. It flows. Cognitive stress does not flow. It breaks some of these old perceptions of fear. This is how we need to purify our inner instrument, our antakaran. So, where do these desires is the desires there? Yes. In the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad, it is desire, doubt, faith, want of faith, all these things. Kama, sankalpa, vichikitsa, shraddha, ashraddha, riti, bhi. Will, shame, intelligence, all these things are but the mind. So these desires, etc., in the mind, they are not in the self, the Atman. So the moment you drop these desires, how do we do it? Well, you clung to them and they clung to you. Like thinking it was a blanket, the student goes and tries to pull it to show. Well, that bear caught that student and is trying. So we have clung to the desires and desires cling to our hearts. That is what we have been doing. So we'll have to cut it off. So when all desires clinging to one's heart fall off, then the mortal becomes immortal. Atha martyo amrito bhavati. That mortal becomes immortal. Immortal, that person transcends death and everything. That person becomes what? Atra Brahma samasnati. One realizes Brahman here, attains Brahman, ashnati. One attains Brahman here while still living in the body. It is not a post-mortem state. It is not a place where you could go and get yourself free from these things. No. You attain immortality here and now. That is what happens. The next verse is, it's a repeat of this same verse with one or two words added extra. When all the knots of the heart are destroyed, even while a person is alive, then a mortal becomes immortal. This much alone is the instruction, where in parenthesis of all the Upanishads. This much alone is this much alone. This is sufficient. The whole of this Katha Upanishad has led us here now. This is the instruction. This much is the instruction, nothing more. Well, there are a few verses more, technically 3 more verses till we end this Upanishad. But this much is enough to give us the freedom, moksha. So the same word has been repeated here, the first 2 words. Yada sarve, when all the knots of the heart, pramidhyante, are destroyed. Hridayasya grantaya. There's a story, a legend. Now, how far is true? It's like the Alexander's Gordian knot. Alexander the Great had crossed over to Anatolia, what is now Turkey, and he had gone to a temple, don't remember which, probably some, you can say, deity. And there in the temple precincts was an old chariot with a complicated knot tied to it. And the legend says that if anyone succeeds in unraveling the knot, that person will become the emperor of the world. So Alexander goes there and he sees that complicated knot a thick rope tying the chariot. He takes his sword off and cuts it. Well, the priest, they yell, "Oh, that's not fair. You never actually untied the knot." Well, what does it matter? The chariot is now free. So to cut the Gordian knot, that is what we also need to do. You're going to sit down and unravel that complicated knot, you'll be wasting your time. Cut it off, hack it. And once you hack it, that are those knots. What are those knots? Even in one of the Upanishad, Vidyate Hridaya Granthi, when the knots of the heart are cut asunder, in the Mundaka Upanishad. Here also, Hridayasya Grantaya, the knots of the heart. Yes, those desires have made these complicated knots around our hearts and making us, you can say, feel bound. That is what actually bondage. Where does bondage rest? In the heart. And what's the cause of the bondage? Desires. Is it simple desires just floating about? No, they have wrapped themselves out in a kind of a complex, complicated knot. And your heart is bound, and there you are, given to the world. Because the world has shown you some things pleasant. You went for it and then found that that thing, whatever object, was not pleasant. You were deluded. So desires have come also because of that ignorance, that delusion. You thought, it makes you think. It makes the real unreal. It makes the infinite finite. It makes the immortal mortal. And it's amazing how we fall for this trick. Amazing. Why can't we see it clearly? So the first line is, when all the knots of the heart are destroyed, even when a person is alive, here it is, even when here it is, Vedanta keeps on insisting that it is here that you need to become free. It's called a state of free while living, Jivan Mukta. And this is what we must try to attain. Who stops us? You. Me? Yes, the ignorant you. That ignorant you has to be pushed aside, and the real you has to be brought out. Then that intellect which is there, shining with the light of consciousness, will show you, will reveal to you the truth. So when a person is alive, then the mortal becomes immortal. This much alone is the instruction of all the Upanishad. That I am the body. The idea falls off. It's replaced by I am the Atman. This is what it is. How do we go about it? As we meditate on a symbol or a divine form through a divine name called a mantra. So the subject is meditating on the object. Both of them are now tied together. The impressions of the world will come and try to disturb you. That is what happens when we sit down to meditate. When I am trying to meditate on the divine effulgence of the forms of the Lord or the form of the goddess through a divine name, impressions, past impressions, and all the, you can say, things that pour into the senses comes and disturbs you. This is actually what needs to be stopped. You don't need to look at those disturbing impressions that come, those thoughts. Keep on focusing on the form and the name of the deity. And as you keep on getting more and more concentrated, all those desires and all the impressions of all the desires, all the distracting, you can say, impressions that are coming through the senses also are pushed away. They recede. And as they recede, you find that you are now with the object of your meditation alone. And it is during that time when the object of meditation keeps on expanding. The more you concentrate on that form of the Lord, the more it expands. And then what happens is a very strange, you can say, phenomena takes place. To put it very, you can say, simply, in terms that you can understand, you are the subject and you're meditating on the object here. Well, actually, this whole thing reverses. That object actually now becomes the subject, and that person, you, becomes an object. The subject becomes the object becomes the subject. The consciousness is reversed. It is during that time, at that moment, when you find that that object was the Lord and that Lord is a subject. I, as an intellect, was nothing but an objectified, you can say, entity. The moment the person realizes this in the depths of the meditation, that person becomes free. So he's saying, this mortal becomes immortal. This is the dynamics. Let me repeat. As you're meditating, you are the subject, you're meditating on the object. As it becomes deeper and deeper, the connection becomes perfect, then the object reverses and becomes the subject becomes the object. It is at that time one becomes liberated. This much alone is the instructions of all the Upanishads, as is saying, Yada sarve prabidhyante hridayasya iha grantaya atam martyomrito bhavati etavadyanusasanam. Etavad hi anusasanam. This much alone is the instruction, anusasanam. So this is how we suddenly realize, yes, this is actually what has happened. The heart which had been given to the world has now become dissipated. You see the illusions of your life. You see how desires had possessed your heart, how it had dragged you. You know, we say love is a beautiful sentiment. Yes, it's better to love the Lord, because we have loved everything else but the Lord. And as a result, we have been kind of scorched by that love. So love becomes, you can say, bitter. There is no bittersweet, so it becomes bitter only. When you turn that love towards the Lord, it becomes sweet. It becomes real love. So when the intellect, which is the subject, becomes the object, it sees, oh my God, what was I doing all the time? That is the time when all the knots of the heart break. Like Alexander the Great, he just cuts those complicated knots. This is exactly what happened. Chitvaivam samshayam yogam atishtotishtha. In the Bhagavad Gita, which we are going to have tomorrow, so the last verse in the 4th chapter was this. So rise up and destroy this doubt born of ignorance, which is like a knot, with the sword of knowledge. And even in the other verses, they are saying, yeah, cut asanga shastrena dridena chitva. Cut this knot of the heart firmly with the sword of detachment. So everywhere it is. So this heart, you don't have to cut your heart. That's a cardiac surgeon does that. You don't have to worry about that. Emotional heart, emotional heart. The spiritual heart. That spiritual heart which is deep down, which is right down in the core. That, as the Upanishads say, is your intellect. That is called the heart. So once that intellect suddenly finds itself free. There are these magicians, they have their very complicated tricks, and they'll bind themselves with a lot of ropes. And people will come and try, they call the people from the audience, come try to untie me, and they simply just cannot untie it. Bound hand and foot like that. And everybody tries and no one succeeds. And then with a snap of a finger, check all the knots. He unties all the knots. Hey, what happened? How did I do it? This is exactly what happens when you come to this realization. The knots of the heart simply drop down. And you become free. So what happened? Actually, you had actually tied the whole thing. There is one, you can say, key element in all that complicated, you can say, knots, where but you've forgotten it in the meantime. If you can get a hold of it, try to remember it. And how do you remember? You remember all that your mistakes that you have done by thinking of the Lord. That's a very strange thing. The more you think of the Lord, your chosen ideal deity, the more you understand your own mistakes. But, well, I didn't do that. Yeah, you did that. When all those kind of things which have been submerged, they surface. Oh, no, not this, not that. No. I'm supposed to be a spiritual person, but all my faults are rising up. That's the way, actually. And then you see where exactly you had overstepped or misstepped in the process of your life, and then you finally you get the hold of that very key, you can say, thing, instrument, and then you pull and all the knots fall off. So meditation is a good thing because you understand all, what a slob what a stupid thing you are good for nothing. Now let's make something out of me. That's meditation. So we will stop here for the simple reason is, this is one, you can say, subject matter which these two verses had shown. We have two more verses to go till we end the book. Technically 4, but we'll take the 2 are important. And the end. And then we'll come to the end of this Katha Upanishad. We also had kind of made an announcement, I made an announcement, that after this Katha Upanishad, which will take another probably 2 Wednesdays. Yeah, it will take 2 Wednesdays. Yeah. Next Wednesday we'll finish them. Yeah. Then I'll kind of recap. We'll give a kind of recapitulate. So after it will take to classes. And after that, we've decided to have a kind of a graded course on meditation. So after, we had spoken of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad for 1 whole year. And the next year we had taken the Katha Upanishad. And wow, it's been a long journey. So people have been asking, well, we have understood the theory. What about the practice? How do we do that? I think that's a good idea instead of filling us up with a lot of theories. And like I said, that is cognitive ease. We like to hear, listen, oh, it's nice, and that's okay. Cognitive stress is a little stressful. You've got to think. So we are deciding to give you a little cognitive stress in having a graded, you can say, course in meditation. How do we sit? How do we breathe? How do we visualize? How do we this? So we will see how far we can pull this, but we will go down to the details. And as you know, the devil is always in the details. And we forget those details and we flounder. We don't know what's happening, why nothing is happening. So we'll take care of the details right on from how do we sit and how do we meditate. So it will be a guided meditation. You, wherever you are, you will also do what we are doing here. So when I tell you to sit down, you sit down. Maybe you don't need a seat, you can use a chair. But I'll give you those kind of instructions about meditation. So spread the word around that this will be good. And it will be live streamed, of course, and also it will be on YouTube. You can access it later on. Each session will be not more than half an hour, maybe 20-25 minutes, because too lengthy a time also it makes the mind stray away. If you can get that quality half an hour time, then it will be highly beneficial. Okay, we'll stop here for today. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.